Okay, thank you. Welcome, I'm Malte. I'm from RMIT University in Melbourne, and I'll be talking about our project, Urban Microclimate Narratives, and about a methodology we've developed using videographic walk-along narrative and data-driven analysis to gain insights into our experiences of microclimates, particularly in the urban environment. So our group have developed this new methodology for exploring, investigating, and assessing the suitability of urban fabric and infrastructure, particularly for active mobility. So particularly interested in walking and cycling through cities, and again, in context of climate change and how we can keep our cities livable and walkable. So this is our team. We're a team of designers, architects, and geographers from, particularly from Australia, Portugal, and Germany. Although Atta is now, he was at TU Munich, but now he's at MIT. And so the context, as I mentioned, is this concept of livable cities and walkable cities, and how we will adapt them in context of rising temperatures that we have all been discussing so far over the last few days, and we'll keep discussing. Our position, though, is to focus very much on experience. So coming from a sort of phenomenological context, and positioning experience over concepts of comfort. And comfort, I'm talking about the old school models of thermal comfort, air conditioning engineers within interior environments. And our question is, how do we experience cities as we move through them, and how does the microclimate and the urban morphology influence and shape that experience? And then in turn, how can we as designers impact on that? So our method is really working with two data sets, quantitative and qualitative. So on the one hand, we're capturing microclimatic data as we walk through the city, and on the other hand, we are capturing our experience as a narrative, as a discussion through the video. So this is our equipment. We have which Atta Shokachian developed, a backpack with 20 sensors in it, capturing 10 sets of climatic data, which is GPS tagged and logged every 5 seconds. So we get these 5-second data points. I don't have that little red dot. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You can see we get every 5 seconds we can click on any of our indices and see what the microclimatic data is telling us. And we're carrying a GoPro video camera where we are capturing the narrative of our walk, and using mobile phone for navigation, timekeeping, and so on. So pre-planning, we carefully discuss what sort of urban morphology we want to move through. And so we want a mix of low-rise, high-rise, urban density, some parks, and then make use of river as well. We wait, obviously, for the right weather conditions because we are looking at hot, sort of summer or warm to hot summer days. We always set out at the same time, so around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And during our walk, the the team is instructed to actually notate any perceptual experience as it arises. So if you feel the breeze, say, I feel a nice breeze, or I feel the sun on my back, or I'm feeling hot, or there's an interesting smell around me. And we also then engage into associated thoughts with the urban morphology, what's maybe creating our experience. And as colleague João keeps mentioning, we then also sort of engage into quite a philosophical talk about what's going on. Every 15 minutes, we stop to do a quick recap. And at the end of the day, we do a longer discussion about the day, preferably at a beer garden. The whole project started in Munich, and so it always ended as at a beer garden, where we then discuss maybe how to improve the narrative and so on. Post-journey, we go through the video recordings, we transcribe and code the data, our discussion, and we then start comparing it to the climate data. So if there's a breeze, we look, was there a breeze? Is there evidence of that? So what are we seeking to discover? We're trying to discover any correlation between microclimate, urban morphology, and our experience. And we're really doing this in context of a design. So it's a design driven for design. So looking at how we can maybe adjust the city. And here we're discussing, is this wall cooling us down? Our thermal camera was broken, but that was quite good actually, because it engaged us in a deeper discussion to try and touch the wall to see what's creating a cooling effect. So we've done so far 3 sets of pilot studies, Munich, Melbourne, and Lisbon. I haven't got the data for Lisbon yet, so I'm just talking about Munich and Melbourne. And we did this across a range of temperatures. So in Munich, a day of 20 degrees average, then 25 degrees roughly, and then one in the low 30s. And in Melbourne, again in the mid 30s, one in the high 20s. And then the city of Melbourne had also asked us to do, they're doing a project along the riverbank called Green Line, and they wanted us to look at that on a hot day. So that was in the very high 30s, low 40s. Now you can already see that the data from Melbourne looks quite different than the data from Munich. Even though in Melbourne on the 27, we have quite a lot of low thermal stress as opposed to Munich, but that has to do with partly the morphology of the city and partly with solar radiation as well. Some of the findings, I'm going to be quick, I'm running out of time. The first finding, quite surprising for me, is that there is very precise, super precise correlation between the narrative perceptual data and the quantitative data. So every time we said there's a nice breeze, and I could look at the timestamp and then go to the other data, to the quantitative data map, there was clear evidence of a breeze. All of a sudden come out. You can see the sun has come out. But that isn't necessarily reversible, or wasn't reversible. So if there is evidence of a breeze in the climate data, it doesn't necessarily mean we actually are perceptually aware of it. And that's to do with a whole series of factors. One of them is that we only really notice a breeze if it actually has an experiential effect on us. So if we're hot, we notice a breeze because it cools us down. If we're already cool, we don't really make note of it. This was, I think, one of our most interesting findings, is that we are shaped at any moment by what we see ahead of us. And so if I'm hot in walking in the sun, but I see that there's shaded relief ahead of me, then I'm actually okay with that, because I know I'm going to be all right in a minute. And I think this is really something we want to look at, because then we can look at, how often do we need to actually plant trees and have shading or having cooling spots? There we go. The other factor we found is that our lexicon to describe our perceptual experiences is very, very poor. And so we need to develop a new language almost to discuss these points. Just really quickly, the other point was that across the 3 days in Munich, which ranged from 20 to 31 average, we actually didn't notice any big difference it's a 2-hour walk, but we didn't feel appreciably worse or stressed on the hotter days than on the cooler day. In Melbourne, we were particularly asked to assess the greening laneways, and you see it's in the middle of the city, and you can really see that these laneways do have an appreciable effect on the UTCI. And we also found that the tall buildings in Melbourne and the relatively narrow streets in the laneway, even whether it's the tall buildings, did create these shadow corridors where the UTCI then was quite a bit lower. We also found the ambience of the laneway was really important. So the fact that not only did maybe this vegetation have some cooling effect, maybe not, but it certainly had a positive perceptual effect on us, on our state of mind. And the other really interesting finding was that, which is a discussion, that light-coloured pavement, which obviously we want because it reduces urban heat island effect, it actually heated up the body because of its high level of radiation. So the reflection from this light pavement reflects the radiation onto the body and heats the body. So that becomes a problem. And this whole, especially through the longer walk along the river, the surface that we're walking on became a really big talking point. And the third point was that the soundscape made an appreciable difference. And so here we're discussing that the sound actually of the water playing, the birds, again had a cooling effect on us experientially, even though it didn't physiologically. And that the UTCI, as we found in Munich, the heat stress doesn't necessarily reflect on how we feel. So here you can see and this is the nice thing of the video. So we're saying we feel cool, even though it wasn't. UTCI is in the high 30s. But you can then look at what else is going on in the urban morphology. And so we have these greening. And this was an interesting one where we walked in Melbourne, where the UTCI, at one point the sun really came out. I better finish. And all of a sudden we really felt very hot. So Caitlin went, "Oh my God, it's hot here." But in a very well-spirited, humorous manner. And as you can see, the MRT is right off the scale at 99 degrees. Radiation is over 1,000 and UTCI is 47. But we're still okay because of the whole context of what we were doing, where we were, and the experience we had prior to that. So I think I'm giving another talk on Friday, data-driven narratives, so you can come to that as well. And I'll finish there. Questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon.